Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It is good to have you here. I was sitting here looking at the charts, looking at the news, and thinking about where we were 1 year ago today versus where we are right now. If you look at the Iraqi Dinar, specifically the parallel market rates versus the official rates, and you look at the sentiment in the community, we are experiencing something historic, but it's also something incredibly testing. We are seeing levels of frustration and volatility that we haven't seen in a long time. But there is a big but to that. We need to remember something about this investment. With the Iraqi dinar, and frankly, with any major financial shift in a country's history, volatility is not a bug. It is a feature. It is part of the process. I want you to really let that sink in for a second. The confusion, the ups and downs in the news cycle, the conflicting reports we hear from the central bank versus the parallel market, it is all inherent to a major move. Look at any major asset in history before it revalued or before it exploded in growth. Look at Bitcoin in the early days. Look at Amazon stock before it dominated the world. All of them had periods where people thought it was over. All of them had major pullbacks where the investors who didn't have conviction got washed out. We know for sure that when it comes to the monetary reform of a nation like Iraq, it is not a straight line. It is not going to be a simple flip of a switch without some noise beforehand. So the frustration you might be feeling today, while none of us like it, and trust me, I can put a smile on my face, but I feel the weight just as much as you do. It is part of the medicine we have to take. Today we are going to talk about the real state of the Iraqi dinar. Not the hype, not the fake dates, but the evidence that tells us this story is moving toward a conclusion. That is my steadfast belief. Now, before we dive into the banking reforms and what the CBI is actually doing, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest with me in the comments below. I'm curious, how long have you been holding? Are you new to this in the last year? Or are you one of the veterans who has been waiting for 10 years or more? Let me know in the comments, because I think it's important we realize we aren't alone in this wait. Let's get the elephant out of the room. We hear a lot of rumors. We hear people saying, it's happening tonight, it's happening tomorrow. And when it doesn't happen, it feels like a slam down. It feels like we took a step back. But look at the actual data coming out of Baghdad. Look at the moves by the Central Bank of Iraq. Everyone said that when the budget was passed or when the oil prices fluctuated that the dinar would collapse, but it hasn't. The official rate is holding steady, and the gap with the parallel market is the battleground. The central bank is actively fighting to close that gap. Why does that matter? Because you cannot have a sovereign, internationally recognized currency with a revalued rate if you have a black market running wild. The fact that they are fighting this battle so aggressively right now is actually a sign that they are preparing for the next stage. There is a lot of noise out there. But let's look at the volatility index of our emotions regarding this investment. It's at a massive high level. What that indicates to me is that there is future anticipation. The big money, the commercial banks inside Iraq, the international merchants, they are positioning themselves. They are anticipating big moves in the Iraqi economy. Right now, today, it feels like it's just dragging on. But guess what, guys? Monetary reform happens slowly, and then it happens all at once. Consider the recent moves regarding electronic payments. This is something we overlook because it sounds boring. Oh, point of sale systems, who cares? You should care. You should care a lot, because you cannot revalue a currency that is purely cash-based and riddled with corruption. The push we are seeing right now to digitize the Iraqi economy, to get the dinar into the banking system and off the streets, is the foundation required for a rate change. A year ago, this wasn't happening at this speed. Today, it is the main headline. That is progress. It's not the flash on the screen you want to see yet, but it is the construction work required to build the house. And let's talk about the reserves. We have to remind ourselves of this. Iraq's gold reserves and foreign currency reserves are sitting at historic highs. What does that mean? It means the currency has backing. It isn't paper floating in the wind. A lot of people compare the dinar to currencies that have failed, like the Venezuelan bolivar or the Zimbabwean dollar. That is a false comparison. Those countries had no money. Iraq has oil. Iraq has gold. Iraq has a young population and a massive amount of potential trade. The paper dinar you hold is a receipt for that potential. Speaking of paper money, I was looking at a US dollar bill the other day. It's just debt notes, But the Iraqi dinar, if the monetary reform is executed as planned and as the IMF and World Bank have guided, is backed by real tangible assets in the ground. We are collecting an asset that is currently undervalued. That is the whole thesis here. If you didn't believe it was undervalued, you wouldn't be watching this video. You would have sold a long time ago, but you are still here. Why? Because you know that logically a country with this much wealth cannot have a currency worth less than a fraction of a penny forever. It defies economic gravity. Now, I want to address something that I see in the community a lot, and it worries me. It's the guru trap. You know, the people who promise you a date. It's happening on Tuesday, and then Tuesday comes and goes. We need to stop looking for dates and start looking for events. The accession to the World Trade Organization, WTO, that is an event. The passing of the oil and gas law, that is an event. These are the mile markers. When we see the budget being fully implemented, when we see the banking sectors connecting internationally, that is the sevel or the signal we are looking for. I want to take a moment to talk about the global perspective. We are seeing a shift in the world. We are seeing countries move away from the US dollar dominance, the so-called de-dollarization. Iraq is right in the middle of this. They are trying to balance their relationship with the US Federal Reserve and their trade with neighbors like Iran and China. This geopolitical game is why we see the delays. It's not because the CBI doesn't know what to do. It's because they are walking a tightrope. But here's the good news for us. Iraq wants sovereignty. You cannot be a sovereign nation if your currency is controlled by the dollar auction and smuggled out of the country. To get that sovereignty, they must strengthen the dinar. It is the only path forward that aligns perfectly with what we as investors are waiting for. Let's look at the purchasing power inside Iraq. This is a real fact we need to focus on. The Iraqi citizen is suffering from inflation because of the exchange rate difference. The government knows this. The prime minister knows this. Their jobs depend on fixing the purchasing power of the dinar. How do you fix purchasing power? You increase the value of the local currency. You make the dinar buy more goods. That is the fundamental economic pressure that is pushing this reform forward. It's not about making us rich. It's about saving their own economy. And luckily, those two goals lead to the same destination, a stronger dinar. I know it's hard. I know some of you look at the investment you made years ago and think, man, I could have put that money into NVIDIA or Bitcoin. And sure, hindsight is 20/20. But you have to remember why you entered this trade. You entered it because it is an asymmetric bet. The risk is relatively low. You own the currency of a wealthy nation, but the reward potential is life-changing. That hasn't changed. The fundamentals haven't gotten worse. They have actually gotten better. Security in Iraq is better than it was 5 years ago. Oil production is stable. The banking sector is modernizing. The only thing missing is the final step of the monetary reform. And frankly, the silence we sometimes hear, that can be a good thing. When things get quiet, that's often when the real work is being done behind the scenes. The big meetings at the IMF, the meetings with the US Treasury, they don't broadcast the details of those meetings live on TV. They just give us the results when it's done. I want to give a shout out to everyone who comments and supports this channel. You guys are the reason I keep digging for these facts. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a guy who looks at the data, looks at the news, and tries to connect the dots without the hype. I don't want to sell you a dream. I want to track reality. And the reality is the setup is there. The chess pieces are on the board. We are just waiting for that final move. If you look at the gold market, central banks are buying gold like crazy. China is buying gold. Why? Because they know fiat currency is losing value. Iraq is doing the same. They are diversifying. This tells us they are preparing for a world where their currency needs to stand on its own 2 feet. So what do we do now? Do we sell? Do we give up? If you sell now, you are walking away right before the finish line, in my opinion. But again, you have to do what is right for your family. If you need the money for an emergency, that's real life. But if you are selling just because you are bored or just because you are frustrated with the timing, I think you need to zoom out. Look at the yearly chart, not the daily chart. Look at the progress over the last 24 months compared to the last 20 years. We are moving faster now than ever before. I believe we are going to look back at this time, maybe a year from now, maybe 2, and say, wow, the signs were all there. We will talk about the days when the parallel market was fluctuating and we were stressed, and we will laugh about it because we held on to our asset. I want to ask you for a favor. If you appreciate this kind of fact-based analysis where I don't just scream RV tomorrow, but actually look at the economic mechanics, please subscribe to the channel. It's free and it helps me keep going. Also, hit that like button so YouTube knows this is real content, not spam. And seriously, leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts on the central bank's latest move with the electronic payments. Do you think this is the key, or do you think it's the oil law? I learn just as much from reading your comments as I do from my own research. We are a community here. We navigate these choppy waters together. So stay strong. Take your blood pressure medicine if you have to go for a walk. Don't stare at the screen all day. The process is playing out. Volatility is just the price of admission for the ride we are on. The fundamentals of Iraq are strong, the reserves are historic, and the pressure for reform is unavoidable. That is why I am still here. That is why I am still holding, and I hope you are too. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you in the next video with more updates. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep the faith.